Well, the third season of the Orville New Horizons has come to a close. And now, keep in mind, sometimes there's a mistake in your headcanon and where you think something's going, and you get too married to it, and so what actually happens might ruin it. And that's always a mistake to some extent, because it's not entirely fair to what they actually present, well, when you probably thought your idea was better. But the circumstances of it, is this the final season for Orville? The hopes is that you would get a fourth season. I'm hoping it does. This one, I think, clearly the lockdowns and all the stuff that happened with COVID hurt the show. And I'm thinking that probably goes more to explaining some of the stumbles that I have seen in it. Primarily just shows it seemed rather slow. And the characters seemed a bit off at times. And of course, in quite a few episodes, in some episodes it was appropriate, but for most, not so much, where the humor was just completely gone. I didn't have a problem with serious storylines. I mean, obviously, when the big reveal about the Kalon was a very serious episode, and it's understandable. And it just worked so well, especially in a lot of ways when you didn't quite see everything that was coming. But that's one of the things that I thought was to the detriment of this season, even though it delivered some great episodes and some excellent performances and whatnot. So had the interference hadn't happened, probably would be a different show. There was an episode they couldn't shoot because of the lockdowns. It's now it became a novel, the Sympathy for the Devil story. So you can see where, it shook up the flow. So I'm guessing that had something to do with it. And so what are you going to do? For a lot of productions lean on that as an excuse, but in the case of Orville, I think it's probably pretty spot on, especially with the long delay of the release of the season. So otherwise, it would have been out much sooner. And without the interference of the lockdowns and whatnot, would be a very different show. But the plot points and everything would have played out the same. I looked ahead and saw the titles of Domino and Future Unknown, and I had a very different, more darker thinking of what the outcome would be. And perhaps, just perhaps, if they were assured there could be a fourth season, I'm guessing they just didn't know. I'm hoping there is one, but this final episode gives them a send-off. If you wish it to be so. I don't. But it's not like Raised by Wolves that ends on a cliffhanger. Had this even if it would have been a cool cliffhanger, it still would have been, oh man, well, never it doesn't get renewed, and oh no. So if it's the final one, then well, I guess it fits for it. Because really, most of the narratives that they were following through are wrapped up in Domino. With the Kalon War lingering and casting a long shadow over it. And yet it creates other problems, and they're probably back in the boat with the wars with these former allies, the Mocklins, not just the Krill, stuff like that. Is a lot of stuff they could play with in a future season. And so so it would be a shame if it doesn't get to continue, because I don't think the stumbles are enough to write this off and just end it. They've lost it. It's no good. I don't think so. I think there's a lot of possibilities here. In the final episode, the humor does return. I just don't think it was. In fact, it's really funny and right off at the opening, but I kind of wished for a little more. There's some silly things here and there with Isaac and Claire, and the culmination, I guess, of their relationship here in this strange coupling that has happened. Speaking of coupling, Bortus and Clyden are reunited, and that gives a lot of humor as it involves yet another strange Mocklin ritual. And If there's a joke or a funny scene that saves the show, it's this one. But it's right at the beginning, and then, you go through the rest. Once again, they revisit a character from a previous episode, Majority Rule, from way back when in the first season of this character, Lysella, who, knew who they were. Well, she wants to escape her world and wants to be a part of the Union world where, with all the great technology and future stuff. And they figure, well, she's basically asking for asylum, and as long as she stays with them, it's fine. She'll just have to make a life for herself with them. But as she goes forward, it's not really that she gives it off that she's having trouble fitting in and all that, and she strikes up a friendship with Kelly, and Kelly tries to help her and everything. But she confesses to Kelly what it is that she feels guilty because she has all this access to this advanced technology that she can't help but think of all the wonders it could do on her world. And a lot of problems that are devastating to her world are simply solved with the technology that they have on the Orville. So, of course, what happens? Well, eventually she says, I want to go back home. I'm not fitting in here and all this sort of stuff. And surprisingly, they agreed to let this happen. I don't know that would have happened. And there's another stumble here. Of course, what is she doing? She tries to leave. She gets on the shuttle, and the security alarm goes off, like what locks the shopping carts at the grocery store. Because, of course, she's stealing some technology, and they search her bags and find it. And she wanted to share this with her world and help these people and all that. So Kelly decides to explain to her, which she'd already had, saying the danger of of course, it's like the Prime Directive in Star Trek. It's the same idea. But it's true, just dumping this advanced technology on an underdeveloped society, the dangers that could occur from that. But she just says it. She doesn't really stress it further. And so she takes her to the simulator, the holodeck, and shows her what happened to a planet that in the past, before they came up with this rule, what they did with this world that they found didn't have their technology, and decided to help them out and share with them that technology. And, they abused it, and within a few years, they were completely wiped out, and apparently developed some sort of zombie virus or something, but the whole world was destroyed. Now, see, this would get the point across. It's what she should have done in the first place, to explain to her about why they can't do this. They can't just give away technology. They've got to learn it on their own and go through the struggles and the natural evolution that species must go through to get there. And all she had to do was this, but she doesn't do it at the outset, and does it, which, come on, you could see it a mile away what she was attempting to do. Especially since she told her about, I'm feeling guilty, So it's a bit shaky on that, and you could still get there, but I guess it would have involved her trying to steal something and escaping, and they have to capture her or something like that. But then, would you go through with that, with this character, and let her stay, which is what happens, because there's really nothing else for her to do. Yeah, I don't know, but it's a bit of a plot hole, I think. I think Kelly would have thought of that before she nearly gets it. Either that, or they knew all along and they were just going to let this play through, knowing she would never leave the ship with the technology anyway. So I guess it's possible to write it off as that. And then, you Claire and Isaac, and it's mostly kind of silly, but it's also in playing into what they were demonstrating, and perhaps if the lockdowns hadn't interfered, they could have orchestrated it better. But even so, they did a fairly decent job about this, that, Isaac keeps communicating to her as he can, but it's obvious through what the events that's happened that even though the emotion chip didn't work for him, he has feelings for Claire. He cares for Claire. He just doesn't understand that he does. And so that's what's playing out here. And this is also playing out with the Kalons at large. And that's another big funny part about this. I guess I'd be spoiling it if I said what happens here, but how the reason why he invites the Kalon and all that. But it's the way it plays out. Without saying anything, I guess I probably gave it away. But as it plays out, that's part of the reasons why they were compassionate toward the Kalon and not wiping them out, and that they can grow in the way that Isaac has. So anyway, that's all. It's good stuff. It's just, I think there was a lot of interference with the show, and still, it's rather amazing what they were able to achieve. I mean, the show always looked spectacular. The effects work was excellent, and puts stuff like the Kenobi series to shame. It's astounding to see it. For the little Orville show to be able to pull this off was incredible. So all in all, and they fly off, not into the sunset, but into a cluster of stars. It's kind of like the ending of Undiscovered Country, you know. And there's a surprise little cameo from a guest star here and stuff like that. But if this is the end, then I guess it's a nice little send-off as an episode that didn't have some big adventure or anything, but it's a quiet send-off for them, where the big adventure was last episode. So there's still an awful lot there that they could explore with this series, especially things that they've done in this season. All kinds of stuff that could be revisited, which is a lot of what they did in this one, revisiting past episodes as well. And so it would be a shame for it not to continue. There's been rumors about doing a follow-up movie, and fine, but I would much rather another season. And hopefully it got enough eyeballs on it and interest that that's what they'll do. So despite what I admit, honestly, are stumbles in the show, I still enjoyed it, and I hope it didn't turn off anybody from it, because I don't think that was enough to do that. But in light of the current era, you get a whiff of anything political and that kind of thing. I understand, and that's the unfortunate damage caused by that foolishness that's happened with other franchises and programs. But it's not quite to that extent with Orville. I think it's handled in much more careful hands and intent for storytelling. Of course, the politics of Seth MacFarlane and whatnot. But so far, I don't see him allowing that to damage his work, his art here. So, for what it is, it's a good run. Second season is easily the best of the three, but there was a lot of great stuff in this season. And easily, now that it's completed, the Twice in a Lifetime episode is a masterpiece. It's a classic. Even an element of that is resolved in this final episode. But it's also an element they could revisit, and I kind of think there's telltale signs within that episode that it could be revisited, which could be a bit of a problem. The follow-up might not be as good as the original. The original was pretty damn good, and easily is the high point of the season. It's a really good episode. So overall, excellent run of Orville, and I do hope we see another season of the Orville for even newer horizons. I don't guess they'll need that for the title, but what have you. I would hope there would be a fourth season of the Orville.